In this episode, I'm once again joined by Dr. Ian Wickramasekera, Bön Buddhist practitioner and Associate Professor of Transpersonal Counselling at Naropa University. On the 19th of March 2020, Ian woke up with a headache, dizziness and fatigue. He had contracted COVID-19. While symptoms initially receded, and it seemed this might be a light case, events soon took a dramatic turn for the worse. What followed brought Ian to the very precipice of death and forced him to draw on all his decades of advanced meditation and hypnosis training. Ian recounts how, his life hanging by a thread, he experienced the dissolution of his bodily elements, of slipping into the between lives realm of the Bardo, and the emergence of the clear light of the nature of mind. We learn how, while fighting for every breath and subject to experimental medicines, Ian's practice of Tummo transformed his bodily agony into spiritual bliss. Ian also reveals the life-changing consequences of this near-death experience and the radical change it has affected in his being. So without further ado, Dr. Ian Wickramasekera. Dr. Ian Wickramasekera, welcome back to the podcast.
Oh, thank you. So glad to be here with you, Steve. Thank you.
This is our fourth episode together, and as usual, it seems, you left us on quite the cliffhanger in episode 3. On the 19th of March, 2020, you woke up with a headache, dizziness, and fatigue. COVID-19 was the likely cause. These symptoms initially receded, and it seemed like perhaps you were going to get off quite lightly, but that wasn't to be.
Yes.
You were to face a cacophony of neurological crises that would bring you really right up to death's door itself. Can you take us back to the beginning of that time period, those early stages, and walk us through how it was you came to end up in such critical condition?
Well, my goodness. Yeah, I'm very happy to do so. And I'm just thinking, even the last time, there's a strange way in which the adversity of this experience, I feel like really brought together like all the teachings I ever received in either the tradition of hypnosis or any dharmic tradition I studied with. So while this is a kind of a story of much of suffering, also it's a story of much transcendent joy. and but at any rate, so how this all started, you're right. It was March 19th when I started to really think, maybe I have this thing, A few days before, I had been with a client I have that, he likes to use a lot of drugs, and he hangs out with a lot of folks who are using drugs on the streets and are homeless. And while we were talking, he was in a very elevated mood. And as sometimes happens when someone is in a manic episode, he was speaking about 1,000 miles a minute, and he was spitting out his mouth. And this big old glob of spit just fell right in my eye. And, I tried not for that to happen, but it has happened over time. If you work with people with chronic mental illness, every once in a while this is going to happen. So I didn't take any offense to it. Indeed, he was a bit horrified that it happened. But about maybe 3 or 4 days after that, I started to feel a bit sick. And my first reaction was, I was kind of glad. I was like, oh, this is great. Maybe I'll just get this illness like right off the bat, and then I'll get better like most people, and I'll have been sick and I'll have some immunity. And then I even started to think about all my friends who, are in very immunocompromised situations. And I thought, oh, this is great. I can go and run errands for them, and I'll be able to do things because I won't have to worry about it as much. At least that's what I was thinking at the time, though the picture of immunity after COVID is not as optimistic now as I was thinking then. But I started to get a fever, and I started to notice that I was just so much more tired than I had been. Also at this time, I started to have a strange pain in my knee that I didn't understand what it was about. Um, and I just assumed I'd banged it or something. Um, and around this time, uh, as I was feeling ill, and kind of my daily schedule sort of fell apart. I just was not capable of being as productive as normal. I noticed that as the fever got more and more deep, my appetite went down, and I seemed to be getting dehydrated. And just like a whole days would just suddenly pass by. Like I'd go to wake up, and I'd look at my phone and see what time it was, and then I thought, oh, I should take a shower and do all these things I like to do in the morning. And then I would have done none of them, and it was 3 hours later, and I was still thinking about trying to initiate all these behaviors that I normally just do, and maybe take me like a half hour or an hour. And I was like, wow, I must really be out of it. And then it kept getting more intense. And I was sweating a lot, and I was passing whole days in this kind of uh, delirious state. And because I have been trained as a neuropsychologist, I did actually realize I was in a state of delirium, though perhaps I was a lot slower to come to that realization. Uh, and around that time, I don't know exactly when, but within a few days of all of this, I went to take a shower. And while I was in the shower, all of a sudden, everything went black, and it felt like I was going to pass out, um, or that I kind of already was. I blacked out, and it lasted maybe about 30 seconds. And I realized that it was likely I just suffered some form of a stroke. Um, and so this seemed bad. This seemed very bad. And at the same time, my ability to kind of mm, reason through what my next steps should be were pretty bad. And um, I spoke to my doctor over the phone, who had, at that point, she had gone to a full like video format of treating patients. And for whatever reason, she didn't seem concerned that I'd suffered a stroke, even though I was pretty sure I had, having treated many, many folks with a stroke and done a lot of neuropsychological exams with people with stroke. I figured I'd probably suffered what they call a transient ischemic attack, a mini stroke. It didn't last very long, but I noticed that it seemed like it was more a brain phenomena than something else. And she was trying to say that maybe the pain in my leg, like I thought maybe the pain in my leg was where a blood clot was forming. And then that had finally passed up to my brain somehow. And she thought, well, you've done a lot of long distance running, and she's a long distance runner too. And so she thought maybe it was that, and that maybe because I'd had a fever for so long, that I just had like an episode of very powerful vasovagal syncope, which is when you have a temporary insufficiency of blood supply. And I had been laying down for a long time. So, I mean, this is a possible hypothesis. Um, but I've actually had vasovagal syncope most of my life. And so I'm kind of used to what that feels like. And it usually happens after I've been lying down and then I stand up right away. But in this case, I had been standing in the shower for more than 5-10 minutes when this happened. So it didn't seem like there was some change in my body position that could have uh, made that possible. Oh, it is possible. Um, I don't know. I was concerned, but at any rate, that's what she said. Um, and at this time, it was very difficult to get COVID-19 testing. The state of Colorado was at that time just really ramping up to the level of testing that we have now. And so testing was preserved for people who were actually going to be hospitalized to, kind of triage them appropriately. And so I didn't really have the ability to get testing. And I thought, oh, whatever, I'll just take care of myself at home. And um, during that time, some rather amusing things happened, actually. And then became, I don't know, for me, I think a lot about having fever, always reminded of some of the, stories of Milarepa and other yogis who like actually enjoyed practicing while sick, and so I was kind of put my mind to that and kind of studying the experience of being so ill. And it really is not, for me at least, so awful. Uh, I find that the delirium kind of feelings, um, they actually have a mildly kind of relaxing nature, and that it's like a signal that you can't do as much. So I cut down on all my commitments, and I canceled a bunch of things that ordinarily I do, and just relaxing and reading a lot of things during the day, and just kind of appreciating the sort of dreamlike nature of things and relaxing.
Were you afraid?
No, actually, I was a little afraid about maybe I had a stroke, because that actually runs in my family. And my father at one point suffered a bunch of transient ischemic attacks and lost his judgment for a time and did some really crazy things. And so I started to wonder, oh Lord, don't let me do such crazy things by losing my judgment. Um, so that was something that I was concerned with. But other than that, the actual experience of having a temperature and being in this dreamlike condition, um, I don't know, is not that different from being incredibly stoned or on LSD or something. It's like I kind of liked it, and um, I don't know if I liked it, but if it had to happen, at least I could appreciate that it was making me relax, and it was making me do less. And I was enjoying spending time with my cat, and days passed very, very quickly. And I was able to sleep mostly at night. And so I don't know, it was okay. I was definitely concerned that maybe my fevers were getting too high. And I wondered about that. Um, but I don't know, some really funny things happened. Like one day, I passed out on the couch at night, and I had been watching. I don't even remember what I was watching, but I was watching some mini series on television all day long. I might have been rewatching the entire Lord of the Rings series if I think about it now. I think starting with The Hobbit, and then I went into that, And somehow I woke up in the uh, maybe it was like I don't know, 4 or 5 a.m. or something, having spent the whole night on the television with the television screen flashing at me in this weird way. And I looked up on my living room wall, and suddenly there was a window in my living room wall that had never been there. And on the other side of that living room wall is actually a garage. And I remembered that. I was like, hey, there's a garage on the other side. Now there's a window. And now on top of that, there was a man behind that window. And he was kind of like standing there. He's kind of like this sort of average looking, kind of friendly looking white man. And he's just kind of, uh, this is like maybe like 10 feet off the ground, so also I don't know what he was standing on, but he's like there in the window. And at this moment, I guess some of the lucid dreaming training kind of struck me, because I was seeing this and realizing probably there's not window there, but yet I'm seeing guy there. And so I realized this must be a dream, kind of intuitively. And so then I was like, hey, how you doing? And so I start talking to this man behind the window, And he's like, "Oh, doing fine, it's a good day," and this kind of thing. And we were just sort of chatting about normal things people who don't know each other chat about: weather, how was your day. And then about 5 minutes into it, uh, I was like, I'm pretty sure that I don't have a window in my living room wall. And then he said, "Yeah, that's true. You should probably go to the hospital today." And then the window and him vanished. And that was around the time that a new symptom appeared. And that was, uh, at first I was having trouble walking. And at first I thought it was because I knew that I had lost weight because I hadn't been eating much. And so I thought I'm just weak. Um, but as I tried to go down the stairs with a few hours after that had happened, I noticed that it was not just feeling weak. I was actually having a lot of trouble with the act of balancing. Um, Something was actually wrong with my balance. And so I thought, well, that's different, but maybe I'm just weak and hungry. Um, and I asked this dear friend of mine who's a nurse, just such a wonderful woman, would she help bring me some delicious food, And so she brought me all this delicious food and a ton of other things I didn't ask, Gatorade and all kinds of things. And because she's a nurse that worked at the time with a very immunocompromised person, she just put it at my door, and then um, we talked through the door. But by that time, something even worse had happened, which was I had actually begun to lose the ability to stand at all. Um, and I was now, not only could I not balance going down the stairs, it was just very strange. I had spent some time in the intermediate time in my bed. And when I went to get out of the bed, and this is just a few hours later, um, I found I was just couldn't stand on my feet, and I was like, without leaning on something, I couldn't stand. I just didn't. And the weird thing was that it didn't seem there was a strength issue involved, but it didn't seem. It seemed like just somehow the muscles weren't able to do it, and I had no idea what this was anymore. It didn't seem like a stroke thing, so I was a little relieved about that. But next thing I know, uh, I had been preparing for her to arrive, and that was maybe 4 or 5 hours later. And I had to actually start crawling around my house. And uh, when she arrived, and being a nurse, she immediately was like, "Oh, this is really bad. You need to go to the hospital immediately." And being the stubborn person that I am, I said, "Okay, I see this. But let me look into what would be the cheapest way for me to do this." Because I was very afraid that I was going to select the ambulance. Unfortunately, the way medical care, for-profit medical care works in the United States, there are all kinds of ways that you can get totally bankrupted by medical debt. And I was afraid this was the situation. So I said, well, let me call my insurance company and find out, how am I supposed to get to the hospital, without losing my shirt, and then which hospital I'm supposed to go to that they'll actually pay for. Uh, and so I went to start doing that, and she went off, and I think I must have, around this time, it seemed like my fever had broken actually. So I was actually feeling okay. Like I thought, oh, I just need to eat this food and maybe I'll be better. And so I ate a bunch of food, and indeed it tasted quite tasty. She brought me all this wonderful barbecue. It was so wonderful. It's one of my favorite American foods is barbecue meat. And there's a Southern tradition here of smoking meats. It's quite wonderful. Um, and I just kept waiting to feel better. And indeed, I didn't feel feverish anymore. But um, the undeniable fact was that when I first started crawling, I was feeling like I could do that pretty strongly. And now, actually, I had lost even more strength. And I was actually not able to use my legs too well in crawling. And I was actually more pushing myself with my arms. And I actually got to the point where I could no longer push myself up on the couch. And that's when I thought, oh God, and I had actually somehow talked to some people from my insurance company, and they had told me about a hospital that they had a preferred relationship with, and it was a good enough hospital for me as far as I was concerned. Um, and so I came to terms with that. And around then, my good friend Bethany calls me on the phone, the nurse, and she's like, "Hey, did you go to the hospital yet?" And I was like, "No." I was like, "She's like, come on, you know." Then she sort of like took over and said, "Well, I'm just going to call the ambulance, and talk. I'll stay on the phone with you." And so she did. She called an ambulance. And by the time they got there, I actually had lost even more ability. I couldn't get up on the couch, and I was just kind of laying on the floor. Um, and it was so ironic to me because I didn't feel that I had a fever anymore, and I just didn't understand what was happening. I knew that I'd probably had a stroke earlier in the week, and so I thought, gosh, I hope this is not related to that. Have I been bleeding out all this time or some weird thing? And um, so I was actually looking forward to the gentleman arriving. Uh, and they did really quickly after she called, and she stayed on the phone with me. Uh, and then I reached this kind of unfortunate experience, which was that because I didn't have a fever anymore and I had these weird symptoms, and we do have this tremendous opioid drug crisis in this country, and perhaps because I have long hair and I was wearing a tank top of Lord Sri Krishna. No, no, I'm sorry, Lord Shiva. I think they sort of right away thought I was a drug overdose, and so they kept asking me about what drugs I had taken, and they, wanted to maybe administer Narcan to me or something. They thought maybe I was, and so it took me a long time to convince them that actually, this wasn't that. I was not uh, into opiates and actually never have been. uh, you know, and I was like, no, I wish this was that. Then, this could be over. This is not that. And I tried to explain to them that I was a neuropsychologist, and that something else was going on here, and trying to explain it. But I guess to them I looked like a drug user, and then they got kind of irritated with me. And the strange thing was, uh, I don't know if they were trying to test the limits of like, was I faking it or whatever, but they wouldn't uh, put me on a stretcher and get me out of there. They said they made this excuse like the stretcher wouldn't fit through the door, which is not really true. Uh, and so I finally I said, well, I'll just use my strength and crawl out of here if that'll help. And so I crawled out of. I had to crawl about 5 feet on this concrete, over to their stretcher, and then I guess some firemen arrived, and then they all just, I don't know, the ambulance guys didn't want to do it for some reason, and um, I guess they just thought I was a drug abuser. I don't know. This is really not a good way to treat drug abusers, by the way. Anyway, this is really awful. Uh, but at any rate, the firemen just uh, lifted me up and put me on the stretcher, and they started taking me to the hospital, and they kept like quizzing me about whether I was on heroin or fentanyl or some such thing. Um, and when I got there, the first medical professionals on the scene seemed to rule that possibility out very quickly. I don't know what it was that they weren't seeing that made them realize it wasn't that. And then they started thinking about this COVID-19, and it's something that I wasn't aware of at the time, how many other neurological conditions it can create. And they sent me to all kinds of testing and MRIs, and kept drawing so much blood. By the time I left there, although I'm not an IV drug user, I looked like one. I had to, after a week there, I had so many track marks on my arms. It was ridiculous from being taking so many blood samples and medications, and poked and prodded all over the place. Um, and it was pretty extreme because they really were having difficulty figuring out what might be going wrong with me. But about 3 hours after I was there, this neurologist comes to see me, and unbeknownst to me, he was one of the hmm, most prominent neurologists in the entire area. And in particular, he was very well known for his treatment of a syndrome called Guillain-Barre syndrome. And he asked about the progression of my symptoms. I said that it started with my feet and my legs, and then it seemed like even my arms were going out. And as he was asking me these questions, I started to realize, oh yeah, there's a progression of this. I was like, and so then I was like, oh, this can't be so much worse then, right? It's like already done its worst. Like, I'm losing sensation and ability to use my motor neurons in my feet and legs and my arms, and it can't get much worse, right? And he's like, no, it's this, if this continues, you're going to lose the ability to breathe. I was like, what? And it's like, yeah. Uh, and I think this might have been on the second day I was at the hospital when he said this. And they wanted to do a lumbar puncture of my spine to see if they could find out if indeed I had Epstein-Barr and Guillain-Barre, which he thought I did. Epstein-Barr is a disease that causes a lot of weakness and other issues, and Guillain-Barre is a progressive motor neuron dysregulation, and so you lose the ability to walk and this kind of thing, and eventually it can kill you by not being able to breathe. And I think it was maybe my second day at that hospital that he told me that they didn't have a positive sign of Guillain-Barre, but I did have Epstein-Barr. But he felt that I did have Guillain-Barre. The fact that they didn't have a positive indication of that at the time was not necessarily an indication I didn't have it. Also, he said, what he said about my breathing being disrupted actually came to pass, that my oxygen saturation levels were going down, which typically I think are like in the 90s, and mine was going now down into the 80s. And so, I've actually been with people many times in the hospital when their O2 levels are declining. I've worked with a lot of people who have COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease from, lung cancer and all kinds of conditions. And given them a lot of breathing exercise trainings, usually mindfulness, but, other things too, to kind of help them cope with the difficulty of it. And usually if you breathe voluntarily in this way, your O2 levels will climb. And mine were now really in a level that I knew affected consciousness, and that it was, actually very serious. And so I was like, oh, this is great. I like have all this training in hypnosis and meditation. Wow, I'll just really, focus on my breathing and keep the O2 levels up as best I could. And I'm a biofeedback guy. And so I was just actually watching the sensors that, that were meant for them to watch. But I was using it as a form of psychophysiology and biofeedback. And so Just actually kind of enjoying the challenge of that, and also controlling all the pain from the difficulties I had with. At this point, I was now unable to move my body, and I was paralyzed. I could move my head and my hands and my fingers a little bit, but I didn't actually even have the strength to really hold a cell phone for very long, and it would generally fall out of my hands. Um, and so this was starting to feel very strange to me. My the last experience that I'd had like that was when I had been strangled to death, uh, and I just started to feel that my connection to the energies in my body they were waning, and I was starting to feel that actually there was this separation of my body. My Nirmanakaya is kind of dissolving, and I was starting to feel it. Actually, I was moving into kind of like Bardo experience. Um, and also around this time, some of the, I don't know if you've read this, probably you have, but a lot of times, folks in Bardo experiences start to have, kind of deeply psychic experiences. And so I started to actually see people in the room that I knew were either alive or dead that were praying for me. So in particular, I saw some dear friends were there. I saw my guru, and I've been trying to get in touch with my guru, and two of my dear teachers I was able to get through to, and I was hoping they would be saying some medicine Buddha practice, or some other Bonpo practices as they would do for me. And I knew
Which teachers had you contacted?
Geshe Yungdrung, the one who lives here in Denver area, and also Tenpa Nima Yungdrung Rinpoche, who I've been studying with the most recently in the last 4 years, is very kindly. This is longer than that, actually. It's more like 6 years, I guess. And I've seen him like twice a year for the last 6 years. Has been really wonderful. Yeah, even he invite me to some of his family events and things. He's a very, very kind teacher. And so they started to give me some instruction. And the instruction was to say this wonderful healing mantra, that we have. It comes from Sitpig Gyalmo, which is like a deity very much associated in Tibet with actually all the traditions. Is also known as Yeshe Walmo, this kind of thing. A lot of traditions have her as a guardian. Palden Lamo is a kind of Gelugpa name, I think. And so I was really saying this mantra, and also they remind me also, that I should, pray for healing, but also not to be too attached, and actually prepare myself for dying.
Were these specters or visions of your teachers giving you that instruction, or was that instruction you'd received from them, their living forms, to say?
There's a come through text that the nurses were kindly showing me, and so I had my cell phone with me. It's funny the things that you hold on to the last minute. I had this wonderful necklace, a blessing of health necklace I received in a healing practice with a very special character on it. I had a purba that my good friend Del Azriel has given me, that's you know sort of associated with purba practice, and then I had cell phone. These were my three objects I had with me. I believe I had a Dharma book, but I don't remember which one I had at that point. Uh, but so I had been trying to contact my teachers, and both of them actually very quickly contacted me back and let me know they were doing practice for me, and actually all the monks in the monastery in Kathmandu were doing practice, and it's wonderful. And I could actually feel it. I could feel, I feel connected to people around the world who's doing practice for me. And as it happens, a number of my former students um, were actually posting a lot of updates about what was going on with me and asking people to pray. And it was amazing. Like literally, thousands of people were praying for me, and I had some experience of that. I must say that I was on the COVID floor and at this hospital, and I could feel the loneliness of the people around me. I was in a room by myself, but I could feel the loneliness of all the people, because no one could come and visit you at this point. And if you're like me and you're not really able to interact with people on Facebook too much, except when maybe a nice nurse would come in, and even then, like they weren't supposed to stay very long for their own safety. Of course, I understood that. Um, so it could potentially have been a very lonely experience, but I just felt that blessings were raining down on me from all these people praying in many different traditions. I know I've been very fortunate to know very wonderful people in many lineages, both Tibetan and otherwise, And so even some wonderful dear friends of mine in the Thelema tradition, a lot of people in Christian tradition praying for me. I guess I was included on a number of churches, prayer lists and things, and uh, I felt this, constant, um, and then also kind of being in this Bardo experience, since I didn't really feel my body too much anymore. At one point, the neurologist came in and he said, I'm going to, see how things are going with you. Will you tell me which hand am I touching? Uh, I'm sorry, which foot am I touching with my hand? And so I looked with my eyes and I said, you're touching my right foot. And he said, no, not with your eyes. Close your eyes. It's like, I was like, I thought you were a neuropsychologist. I was like, yes, I am. Close my eyes. And then I'll say, okay, you're touching my left foot, And then he said, open your eyes. He was touching my left knee. And I was like, oh boy, the old somatosensory cortex is all messed up. And he looked very gravely at me at that point and said, uh, you know, maybe you have another 12 hours, He says, if maybe another 12 or 13 hours, if there is not some uh, disruption in the progression of this Guillain-Barre, he says, even though we don't have the positive indication of this now, um, you will lose the ability to breathe altogether. And maybe we can keep you alive on a ventilator, or maybe you will not come back. And he said, I need to tell you this. And so I was like, oh, and I was just thinking I'll just keep doing my crazy hypnosis and meditation, and eventually this will, come back, or I didn't know what. And then he said he wanted to do this very special treatment that he knew how to prepare a medicine out of blood assays and things. It was a kind of immunological chemotherapy. And I was like, yeah, sure, go ahead. Fine. This sounds great. And so he went off to prepare this medicine, which at the time, though, and the cost of it, I don't even care now, but cost of this was something like, I believe it's like $15,000, to make this medicine. And it was going to take like 5 days. Uh, and I think it actually ended up being more than that. I think it was like $20,000 or something ridiculous like this, which, he didn't tell me that. It was not like I would have refused it or something. And I was like, no, that's too much. Do you have a cheaper one? Do you have the placebo version? That'll be fine. Uh, just don't tell me it's placebo and I'll be fine. Uh, but so this was like really grave. And And then I really felt the Bardo was really arriving, especially now that my body connection was so dysregulated, and it felt like the energies of my body were kind of dissolving. And at the same time, I had a much stronger awareness of, I guess, what we would call the nature of mind. I was really feeling extremely present focused. Um, and I think, like anyone, after he told me that, I guess I had been so focused on what I could do to work with my health condition that I wasn't thinking about the kind of clinging to myself that was inherent in that. But then when he was saying, like, maybe this is it, and you got like maybe 12 hours, uh, and that kind of struck me differently. It's like, oh, I can keep doing what I'm doing, but I'm still going to die. It's like I can control all this pain and the suffering, not being able to move and losing my connection to my body. And, I can kind of cope with and find interest in it is what I was trying to, and curiosity about it, like what was still left and what was it like to live without a body? Because I hadn't really experienced that since I'd been strangled to death. And I was kind of half feeling that. Um, and so, to me, that was all fairly manageable up until when he said, like, oh, ride's over, you got 12 hours, uh, and I started to think desperately about, like, my son is only at the time 16 years old. Now he's 17. And I was thinking, oh, this is not good. I wanted to do more for him. I wanted to live longer and help him in his life. And in the same way that my father, particularly around this age, 17, became very, very helpful to me. I was really looking forward to this time and introducing him more and more to the mysteries of life, which, we've done throughout his life anyways. But I wanted to, go further, and kind of re-experience all the mysteries of the illusionary world and self, the way that my dad did with me. I wanted to do with him, and mysteries of hypnosis and meditation and things. Already I shared these things, but there's still so much more. And I was like, oh man, what a bummer, and uh, I started thinking about other people I loved that I would not see again. And so it's like about a full half hour, I was like really thinking about all the things I was losing. And they were all people. Like not one of them was like all these things, like this tonka on the wall, or, it was all people. This is all the people I'm losing, not book I paid $200 for or something, uh, and experiences. And then that was around the point when spontaneously, suddenly it occurred to me, thinking of all the things that I would be leaving behind and losing. I was like, wow, what a fucking lucky guy you are. It's like, even that you had these people in your life, and I could feel there a lot of them who are still alive, and even some who are dead. My sister was in the room with me, and she's been gone. Uh, how long my sister been gone now? 8 years. 8 years, and it really seemed like my sister was in the room, and my grandmother, who has been dead many, many years. Uh, and then I had these wonderful friends and lovers, just all around. I could feel all of them, and I was like, geez, uh, how did I get so lucky? I got to study the Dharma at an extremely high level. I got to practice in secret lineages practically of many traditions, of the Dharma, and also hypnosis. This is more like open secret lineages of hypnosis that just barely even hear about. And now I started thinking about how I studied the great mysteries of the mind, and how fortunate I was to have these amazing teachers and all these traditions. I was like, damn. And I started thinking about all these people who had invested so much time and love in me, and even they're praying for me to stay alive. Some who are dead were doing. It's really amazing. And I just started, the whole thing switched into gratitude. And so I would say this mantra the Guru gives to me is, Om Abhiya Nago Veso Zoha. So I just say this mantra many thousands of times, and just letting my mind just process all this gratitude for my life. And Bardo become very strong at this point. And I don't know if this is delusion or not, but I started to really feel the possibilities of the Bardo. In particular, time travel became very real to me. So I had the feeling intuitively that after I died, I would have the ability to go forward in time, like the way you were suggesting, by the way, of going down different paths. And I wanted to follow the path of my son and go forward in time. And then, you know, like I had this idea that every once in a while I would say some fucked up shit to him, like when something cool was going on in his life, I would say something, I don't know, the force will be with you always, or some shit like this, and something funny and encouraging, Uh, I actually have this experience with my sister. My sister died actually of a very aggressive form of pneumonia 8 years ago. And every once in a while, when something is going on in my life, I will feel her presence, and she will say generally something pretty sarcastic to me. Like, it's usually when I've done something dumb, and then she'll say, dumbass, So I was kind of thinking I would do this with my son and some other dear friends of mine who have a young baby. They're my friends, Jenna and Eric. And I feel they have a very special child. And so I wanted to kind of follow them in their life and encourage them as parents and this kind of thing. They have been the best friends ever in so many different contexts. But at any rate, so I started to feel this possibility, and I was thinking about that and kind of looking forward to it. And actually, uh, I lost totally. That's actually, this is the funny thing, is that maybe about 4 hours into this kind of just beautiful experience of gratitude, and at the same time, like I never felt alone, not for 1 minute. The room was crowded with beings alive and not alive, and blessings raining on me. And also I'm try then realize I have so much wealth here. This is I must help these people in the hospital. And so I did little Tonglen, for those there, and then try extending out, for all sentient beings everywhere, like you do in stages of Tonglen practice, and just kind of doing this. And it's really sad, there was one person, maybe like one or two rooms from me, I'm not quite sure. Um, and I heard their um, alarm monitors go off a number of times. Um, but I heard them die. I heard they go off, and I heard them, there's certain code words they use in the hospital, which I think most people know now. When they say code blue, that doesn't mean, a good thing. It means someone is dying and everyone available needs to run. And I heard them say a code blue. And a few hours later, they wheeled me out of the place to take me for a test. And I went by the room where I thought it happened, and the bed was now empty. And this person had died. And so I was really trying to do a lot of practice for those who were there, and may they feel cared for and feel blessings. May everything I'm receiving, may they have, a millionfold. May this be given to me. I'm not, save even one bit for myself. May everyone experience this goodness, may all. So that was really wonderful. And I was totally prepared to die. And actually, um, the advice I had been given was to pray for the healing, but also prepare for death. And so at this point, I had really worked through all this attachment, and instead of thinking about what I would miss, I was more feeling gratitude for what I'd received and feeling very satisfied. Like, if this is all that I could experience in life, I was really, really lucky. And so much gratitude. Thank you, all the beings who have helped me in this life. Thank you. It's wonderful. And they, maybe about 4 hours in, neurologist arrives and said, we don't have the positive test still, but I can clearly see you're dying. So we're just going to give you this medicine. And if it doesn't work, it's not going to kill you. If it works, it may save you. So we'll do this. And so then they hooked me up to this medicine, and it's an IV, and kind of funny to kind of look at it, a $20,000 IV. I was looking at this thing. I didn't at the time know it was that expensive, but I gathered it was a very special thing he had made himself. And it burned like fire. It was amazing. And because I had done all this Tummo practice, right, then I had a way of thinking of that, like it wasn't all bad, I was like, yeah, it's burning away all impurities and, the primordial fireball of wisdom, and so it started to circulate through. It felt very much like a fire energy was going through all my body. And if I wanted to, I realized that I could, using my hypnosis, transform that into something else. And I don't know if that's really hypnosis as compared to dharmic experience. I think it was all one thing at that point. But I very easily was able to transform that so I could tolerate the medicine. And because I thought, well, just really give this thing a chance to work. I'm not going to say it's too painful and take it out. I think it may save my life. It might as well, work with it. And so it was very painful. And they offered me all kinds of opiate medicine for this, and which I generally refuse because I feel like I have the skill to do surgical hypnosis. I don't. If it's just going to be short term, I can do this. And also, I was kind of interested, and I thought, if I can't do it, then I'll just ask for the medicine. No big deal, So I just kind of took the pain and the suffering of that and kind of transformed into bliss, and just really feeling very blissful, like in the Tummo state. It's really, Tummo is not a state actually, but whatever. Tummo practice is a better way to say that. And it was interesting. And after some time, because they were coming in about every half hour to check on my respiration, and they had me do these various tests of my breathing muscles as well. Had me do this thing where you blow into a device, and it's a kind of a pneumatic force dynamometer of some sort, and the levels were improving after I don't know how long that was, maybe 4 or 5 hours. The levels started to improve. So I wasn't sure how much of that was me getting better at using my mind-body relationship and working with the situation, how much was the medicine. But either way, my O2 levels were getting better. So that was a good sign. And sure enough, actually, at one point before the medicine, I realized that if I fell asleep at this point, I probably wouldn't wake up again. And that I was probably keeping my O2 sat levels in the range where I didn't lose consciousness altogether. And so it pretty much had to breathe every breath consciously. It was a real struggle to do it. and also not to be horrified by the fact that I had to do something consciously that ordinarily was, autonomic. But I don't know, everything was coming together where I was like, yes, that is true. And that is actually something that is, threatening. But I'm just going to keep doing the best that I can, even and work with everything as it arrives, and not try to deny that this is happening or get them to give me some pain meds or something that will just kind of put me in this good place. I will keep working with it myself. And it was very threatening and anxious, but I really, you don't hold on to something, it dissolves of its own nature, And so, yeah, it'd be horrible and horrific for some time. And then after some time, yeah, I'm still going. So, it would just, all of that would just dissolve of its own nature. I didn't need to repress it. And it's actually very interesting. I felt that all these teachings I've received in different ways, from hypnosis and various Dharma teachers, particularly Dzogchen, really put me in this place where this didn't have to be so bad. It actually, and even the idea of dying, I was actually now looking forward to a little bit, because I wanted to see if I could do all these crazy things with the time travel. And and I knew that, at some point that would end and I'd be another person, or I don't know, maybe I was so lucky, maybe I'd be liberated in the Bardo itself. I don't know. It was enough for me to play a few practical jokes. Sort of my main attachment to the Bardo was that I wanted to leave some loving practical jokes to close people. But I was prepared. I was fully prepared, and I was not that very attached anymore to the body. I was ready to leave behind. And then actually, I didn't die. This powerful medicine saved my life. I was a very brilliant neurologist who kind of took a risk in giving me the medicine, even though I didn't have a positive test. Like, I think actually the risk he took, which is kind of a sad thing to say, is that if it hadn't worked and it turned out I didn't have Guillain-Barre syndrome, I wonder if they'd had to eat the $20,000 cost of the medicine, like it wouldn't be reimbursed and they would have lost a lot of money for the hospital, uh, which is kind of a weird thing to say, right? And think about what is the value of human life, and a capitalistic pay for profit medicine is how it. I mean, there's also a value in any kind of socialistic solution as well, which I definitely prefer. I wish I had a national health service myself here. Maybe I won't wish that if I was in one. I don't know. Maybe grass is always greener on the other side. But at any rate, I started to really realize that this guy had actually saved my life, because then the other thing that happened was there was also I had to keep going, was my ability to swallow, because I had started to lose the ability to swallow, so that I couldn't drink water, and that was also a ticking time bomb. That if I simply could have choked to death, I was in this really frail state where I could have easily have choked to death because I could no longer swallow and things. This actually persisted for maybe 3 days after this medicine was given to me, this swallowing difficulties. But, I was really working with that too. But yeah, this not breathing and not being able to swallow was really going to kill me. And I understood that, and I accepted it, and I just tried to work with it the best that I could. And it was interesting to me that that not being attached to that actually made it so much better. Like, I was not so anxious about it that I couldn't actually work with it. I found that even though I couldn't reverse it, I could work with it, and I found that to be interesting and hopeful. And um, so I was not repressing the fear of dying, but I found that in facing it, it actually liberated itself, into gratitude and thinking how lucky I have been in this life, and started to turn that practice towards it's really like a chud practice, like a chud where you imagine that you're giving your body, speech, mind for all sentient beings so that they may not suffer, and transforming that experience into like an amrita that takes away all the suffering of all sentient beings. And I guess, yeah, all of this practices, Tummo and chud, and also, I must say, the experience of using psychedelics was very helpful here too, in that one of these things that I learned, at least myself, through using psychedelic medicines, I used LSD quite a bit. We talked about that in the first one. Uh, Also, I used ayahuasca one at a time. I've learned that how important it is not to be attached to um, what you think the experience you're going to have is going to be like with psychedelics. That most of the bad experiences, that difficult experiences I had on psychedelics, were when I refused to accept things as they happened. And if I actually allowed things to happen as they happen, which is, I think actually a great Dzogchen lesson, leave it as it is, as Yangzen Rinpoche likes to say. Is the teacher of all my teachers is Yangzen Rinpoche. And the most popular wisdom saying that you hear from him to answer almost any question is, leave it as it is. And it's a great Dzogchen master. And so the same thing is true with psychedelic experience. It's like, let things be as they are. It was a little bit like how I was relating to this man in my wall. It's like, I'm pretty sure I don't have man in my wall, but hey, how you doing there? And, and so yeah, I just really was not that I would wish that this happened to me or anyone else. In fact, I dearly wish not anyone to experience this suffering. That would be nice. But on the other hand, uh, I also wish that everyone will experience that we all have this innate potential, that even the worst adversity can be transformed into something extremely useful, about discovering who we really are. That is not dependent on any external circumstance or any internal circumstance. And that this distinction between this internal and external is actually quite illusory anyways. And our connection to everyone is so much more powerful. Uh, I really learned that by all these people praying for me, and how directly I was feeling that in my body, and in my mind. My mind stream was very powerful, and I could feel and see people would, kind of arrive as images, like a force ghost in Star Wars. And some people were there the whole time. Actually, it's very amazing. My good friend Bethany, the nurse, she's there the whole time. And I later learned that she was outside the hospital under what she thought was the room I was in, and even so, she couldn't see me. She was out there praying. And my good friend and lover Shayna Boutte was there too, and I would feel them, coming in and out of my room, and it's really wonderful. I don't know how a person gets so lucky that they live their whole life and accumulate such powerful friends and lovers and family members. Is so wonderful. So I would say that I wish no one to experience this, but I also wish everyone would experience this, which is a little why I'm kind of glad to share this part with everyone, because I feel like the process of dying, I feel a little sadness that I didn't die. It's like I went through all this work and effort, you know, uh, and I don't know if effort is actually the right way of saying that, because it all of it was arising spontaneously just by processing things. So I guess that is a kind of work. I could have chosen to gone into more attachment or something. Uh, well, I don't know. Um, it, uh, I would not have chosen for this to happen, but I'm actually really glad it happened, and I feel deeply liberated by some of my attachments in life, to going through that experience. And I don't really think about. I guess I had never really thought about death the same way after the first time I had a near-death experience, but now I don't know. Somehow that attachment feels even less. And I'm actually very excited about being alive, and what else can I do with this crazy, wonderful journey, and how much more benefit can I be to people with the life that I have left? I don't know. It could end tomorrow. It's like a little while ago they said some meteor might hit the planet, on the day before the election. And, who knows? Next moment, while we're filming this, uh, this Apophis asteroid to come and hit us or something. Um, or I may have another stroke. Oh, and actually, they did verify I had a stroke. They did so many MRIs. They told me it was of my cerebellum, actually. Uh, and It's very interesting. So I've been having to deal with a bit of cognitive deficits, and to be a little less attached to my intellect, which I have to admit, I have throughout my life, has been the thing I'm most attached to is actually my intellect. So that's been a useful lesson too. Um, yeah, I'm very grateful that this happened to me. Um, it's very strange to say that, like, um, I feel it was a great blessing, really, to learn about my attachment to my body, and experience the Bardo to some extent, and um, also to learn how much of my meaning in life is derived through relationships with other people, and what a blessing they have been in my life. I can never repay the kindness that was shown to me during that time. There's no way. It was just so much was done for my behalf. Not just the wonderful nurses and doctors. I only mentioned a little bit of that. I had some of the best medical. I've worked in hospitals, and so I can really tell you, I had some of the best medical care a person could receive. It all happened randomly. They didn't even take me to the hospital I wanted to go to. They said, "You're dying, and we're taking you to the closest one." And just by random, it ended up being, the one of the most brilliant neurologists in our area was working there, and all of the people that interacted with me were so kind. Even they played goofy games with me, like they braided my hair one day, and made me look like I had corn rolls and all kinds of goofy stuff. And uh, they were very kind, and they stayed much longer in the room than I think they were actually even supposed to. Uh, and they were the most wonderful people. Um, and then, um, I lived, and uh, then I had a new struggle, which was um, I was now completely paralyzed, and I had the sense of being able to walk, but there was no doubt I could barely move my arms and my legs. I could barely lift more than maybe a centimeter. Even that was even after a few days of that medicine. And I was on that medicine for 5 days, and they took me to a very nice neurorehabilitation hospital that just happened to exist about an hour north of the city. Because all my rehab options to learn how to walk again, they were very bad. Mostly they were like someone would come to my house. But they said if I was willing to go to this hospital that was like, I think it's like an hour and a half. I'm not even really sure where it is. Uh, I know that it's near this place called Greeley, but it's a town I've never been to other than during this experience. And I was not able to really see it in an ambulance. But they took me there, and again, this incredibly auspicious coincidence. They had just finished treating someone with Guillain-Barre syndrome, which is actually really rare. Like Epstein-Barr people get this, but rarely do people get Guillain-Barre where your motor neurons are, dysregulated so badly, and even thought to be demyelinated, so they're not functioning. And so mine were in such a bad state, I could not walk, I could not move my legs, even more than maybe a centimeter when I got to that hospital. But I was so fortunate. The doctor who had was assigned to me had just treated a young man with Guillain-Barre syndrome, which apparently is happening a lot more than normal with COVID-19. Doesn't happen to everyone, but it does happen. And uh, so there were three physical therapists there who had worked extensively with this young man who was actually still there when I got there, but I was not able to meet him. And so they knew exactly what to do because they just treated this. And, to find a doctor and even physical therapists who knew exactly what to do and had just practiced doing that for, 4 or 5 weeks. This is like amazing, such an auspicious, and I feel like these blessings that I was receiving just kept occurring like this. And all of the medical people who treated me were fantastic and had special knowledge of what to do. It's really, I could not have asked for better medical care. And then on top of it, many of these people had the best sense of humor ever, which I love to joke all the time. And they were so kind, even with some of the most difficult thing for me about this were not actually the paralysis. It caused paralysis of my GI tract. So I became deeply constipated. And there were nurses there that were so kind. Like they did things to help me with my constipation. Parents would not do this for their children. Literally like reach in and grab the obstruction out. It sounds very gross to say, but I mean this as a testament to the kindness I received. Those wonderful nurses and physical therapists that took me on and did very many special things in pools to get me walking again. And so I got there. I was not able to walk or do anything. And they work with me every day. Every day, they give me something to do. Even when I couldn't do anything, they would focus on what I could do. Like, okay, you can move your foot an inch. Now to keep doing that while you're laying in bed. Just do that all day long. And so I did all day long. I just moving my foot. And it's kind of hard to see like how that's going to result in you walking later. But you have to keep doing that, not be too attached to remembering how easy it used to be and just deal with things as they were. And every day I got a little better. And that little was very little. But all of a sudden, about 2 weeks before I was discharged, maybe I've been there 3 weeks, I could start to see like how actually now I was able to sit up again. And I was able to transfer into a wheelchair. And I was like, oh, this is great. At least I can get around a wheelchair now. And they were like, no, we have to keep going, and they just kept motivating me. And that's the most wonderful people. And they anyone who arrived at the hospital, they would treat this good as so wonderful. And they just knew exactly what to do with this Guillain-Barre, and it got me many times they would ask me to do something which I felt I would not be able to do. But I just totally placed my trust in them. I was like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? I'll fall on the floor. So what? And and I said, even maybe that will catch me. A lot of these, there were women who weigh much less than me. So actually, I was more afraid I might fall and then they might strain a back muscle trying to catch me or something. So I was just let me fall on the nice cold ground. If I fall, it would be fine. That floor is nice and cold and I'm kind of hot, So just let me fall. I didn't want them to get hurt, and but women were very strong. I don't care how small they were. They're must have done Pilates every moment or something. Their core strength, and so sometimes I did fall, and but it actually I had to keep doing stuff like that. and really challenging, and just leave, work with the anxiety, but you don't have to repress, but don't let it limit. And that got me to walk out of there. Literally, like I went from totally paralyzed for the most part to being able to walk out of there in about 5 weeks. It's just amazing. And that actually, these people are so kind. All of them, even ones that didn't work with me that much, they all were standing in front of the hospital to watch me walk out of there. I mean, it's just so much more than I could ever ask for or repay. And so now I feel very much called that with whatever life I have left, please may I use this benefit to repay all sentient beings, as really feels like this great gift of meaning I receive out of this. May I return all the benefit and wisdom and love I receive in whatever way I'm able to do. It's really an amazing, beautiful thing. Uh, and I do know other people now who have gone through this experience that have been much more discouraged by their circumstances. Like I feel it was just like a razor's edge I was on, where I could have gone deeply into the discouraged thing, and maybe, even I die, I guess. Um, and even worse is, I know folks who keep going back into it, where actually the COVID returns, or sometimes not even the COVID return, but the Guillain-Barre and the Epstein-Barr return. And there's still possibility that could happen to me, though hasn't happened. Uh, and so I really understand this, how much suffering this brings. But so I don't know. I feel so much gratitude for all the training and love and prayers that people gives to me. It made a huge difference, and um, it does feel like it was a blessing. And so I'm saying that from my own experience, and maybe there's some delusion here, you know. And anyone who not experience this in that way, I totally get it. I also experience that suffering too. It's just, I guess, by nature of my training and blessings I receive, that none of that has stayed. It really what's the right way of saying, dissolve like everything into the great expanse of the sky. And may all the suffering of all beings, whether it's COVID or not, may we all learn to relinquish attachment, so that all the suffering may dissolve of its own nature in the great vastness of the sky. Oh. So yeah, boy, thank you for letting me talks about this experience. It's really felt like all my training came together. Uh, Everything I learned about a Tummo, hypnosis, Dzogchen, Chud practice, Tonglen practice. Uh, so that's the part of me is a little like, if I were to like write my own story, maybe that would have been a good death, you know? you know? Now I wonder what's next, hopefully next time. I have this kind of gradual progression into the Bardo that's a little easier to take than, I don't know, you're on a plane 40,000 feet in the air and a missile hits it or something. You find yourself immediately ejected into the Bardo and very confused. Uh, so but I don't know what the next experience of the Bardo, uh, you know, I guess we're always in Bardo really, but uh, I don't know. There's a little part of me that's like that. It's kind of a good way, and maybe the ego's clinging to my Bardo experience. That was the good one. Oh, you missed the dying, But no, not really. I'm more focused on what are the possibilities of repaying all that I've been given, and may I be the most benefit.
May I ask you some questions then?
Oh, please. Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
is there more to say?
No, that's it. Yeah.
Mhm. You mentioned that you began to feel the body, the dissolution of the elements.
Yeah.
I'm curious if you were able to detect the discrete steps of that. It's typically
Hmm.
said there's a certain sequence of the elements dissolving, starting with the earth and so on. It's
Yeah.
also said that one can rehearse that in falling asleep, because the
Hmm.
falling asleep process is a similar pattern of the dissolution of the elements.
Hmm.
So I'm curious if you were able to detect the discrete steps of that, if it matched up to what you expected based on your practice of sleep yoga, for example.
Uh-huh. That's a very good question. You know, uh, here is where some of my laziness as a student will show. In that the precise stages of that, for whatever reason, have never quite stayed with me. Even though I've been led through, what is it called? Hmm, this is the style of this teaching. It's a six Rushen. In the Rushen tradition, this is one of the things you can receive, and I have actually, and also in Bardo and Powa, I received those things, but for whatever reason, I don't know why. Uh, I like remember some things, like earth dissolving into fire, or is it fire dissolving into earth? I don't remember, but they talk about this. Uh, and so I didn't really, the stages of that was not really, to me, it seemed like one thing happening all at once. Um, Although it is also true, I did not actually go all the way. Maybe that would have become more precise. Maybe it was a general dissolving. For me, it felt like everything was just dissolving. And also, my experience of the natural state was becoming very strong. Uh, and body energy, in particular, the one I noticed the most was the fire like loom. Maybe that's because of um, maybe the Tummo practice or something. Uh, it really felt like in my navel chakra, like this fire is really waning. And it just felt like all the life energy is just waning. The throat was really waning, not just because I couldn't swallow. Uh, and if I really think about it, it felt like my crown chakra was opening, you know, maybe third eye, kind of. And heart energy is really waning, and navel chakra is really waning. And also, um, it's this really funny thing to say. Like, I actually had to work myself very diligently to connect with these energies through Salung practice, because uh, when people started describing the wisdom energies that Salung practice is supposed to work with, like I had no innate kind of experience of that. Just a few things, like um, I noticed that if something seemed true to me, that I would have a feeling of, like, something seems correct to me, there would be a feeling of its correctness in my gut, like that feels right, right. And then also, if I felt a joy, I could feel uh, some feeling of that in my heart. And I think most people have something like that, but I had to really work in my Salung practice to, like, actually encounter these wisdom energies before doing a Tummo practice. So when it's really funny, like, I actually had to, like, really work to connect with that, and then now I have that, uh, and then losing it again was very strange. because now the connection was going away of its own nature. It wasn't like before. I guess I was so um, focused on my speech, you know, and really, I guess, throat chakra. Like this was my whole identity, is really more based on this energy, I guess, and maybe crown, I don't know. And so suddenly this was going away again. It seemed very strange, and I could feel that as if the energy was stirring, and then it was more slow, uh, it just dissolving. And I felt some sorrow, that these energies were dissolving. But then all of this non-dualistic perception kept arriving as that was going. And then that's when I started having all these experiences of people praying for me and seeing them praying and feeling blessings arriving in the room, and seeing my grandmother, my sister, and plenty of people who are actually appear to be alive, I guess, uh, and so that was what kind of replaced that. So as the connection to my body was waning, and I was kind of accepting that, and then started really thinking about Bardo's arriving, and then I started to feel intuitively like some of the things that I could do in the Bardo, and I got really excited about this idea of going forward in time. I didn't think about going backwards in time. That's interesting. For some reason, I was really more concerned about being of some benefit to some people in the future, particularly my son and my good friends Eric and Jenna and other people too, but and their son Arlo. So yeah, I did not feel the stages of that. It felt more like is all going all at once. And so I don't know whether that reflects my lack of precision about what I was experiencing, or if it's more, but that's just how it was happening for whatever reason, or that maybe I wasn't experiencing the full phenomena yet. Like maybe this was early thing. But I gotta tell you, that is a great question. And especially now that I've experienced some form of that, I really got to take those Rushen teachings again, to go back to do some POA again, and take 6 realms retreat again. Why not? It's really, it's great. Yeah. Because to me, it was more like my attachment to these things was lessening, and at the same time that the energies themselves, like, now that's an interesting question to me, like how much of that was attachment lessening also reinforced the energy. I'm not sure. Somehow, yeah, it's a very interesting question. I'm not sure of that. Actually, I would need to ask I would need to ask more about that. Do you have any feeling about that? That's interesting. I never thought about this. How much of I don't know, it seems like the wisdom energies are innately existing and not dependent on anything, but other than just having the body, I guess. So it's this really intriguing question to me. Like, was my lack of attachment causing some of that waning, or was that just happening? The Nirmanakaya feels like those should be innately existing, and they're just dissolving. I don't know. Maybe I'm not sure, but it did seem like I was less attached at the same time. Maybe they're becoming stronger too. It's very strange. I really must study this more. I don't know what happened, actually. It's a great question.
What was your plan when you were given 12 hours notice? What was your death plan? Of course, there are many ways that one can consciously die. Which one was your plan?
Well, they gave me this mantra, my gurus gave me this mantra. So I thought I will say this mantra for the benefit of all beings. Particularly, I was thinking about the people that I could feel were very close to death or had died recently. And really wanted to kind of continue doing this, saying this mantra. And also, I was very mindful of the fact that like 12 hours to me was a very meaningful number, and that I've done so many psychedelic experiences, and I thought, wow, that's like a good full acid trip, how wonderful, it's like that's a number I can deal with, and uh, yeah, I went through that life review, and I just really wanted to continue practicing that way, just saying the mantra and praying for healing of all beings, and processing my gratitude. Um, yeah, gratitude became very quickly after about a half hour of just kind of grieving what I would lose. At some point, it just spontaneously arose that I thought, well, how lucky were you that you ever had this thing? It was like, and how many people never got to experience that even once, or maybe they had other good things, but I just started to feel gratitude for the life I'd led. And then the whole thing just flipped. It was just really expressing gratitude and doing something like chud and Tummo with the Bliss, and particularly when they gave me that fire medicine, and using hypnosis to deal with discomfort in general, and maintaining awareness, thinking this is, a lot of trick cho, and a lot of, shine, shamatha kind of trainings. And it's like really using every practice that I'd ever practiced all at once, uh, and trying to remember the view, and just, so in a way, it was almost like doing every practice and doing none, as it was just whatever arriving. I'm working with whatever is arriving, and maybe that's really the essence of all the things I ever learned is, uh, letting happen whatever happens, leave it as it is. And that became very much the subject of the rest of that recovery, was accepting whatever limitation I had and just leaving it as it is, and working with whatever context I was in, and so there's a way in which I feel like I did every practice, and at the same time, I did none. It's just, it's very strange, and very grounded, uh, surprisingly grounded. Because I know a lot about dissociation, and I used a lot of dissociation growing up, and indeed that was my main worry about approaching Dzogchen practice when I worked with Tenzin Wangyal, and he told me I could say this is real, instead of this is a dream. Why don't you say this? This is, why don't you see what happens, and so yeah, I felt very grounded, and this realization is in me, you know. It's very easy to cry thinking about how grateful I am, and how much I would love to be able to be of as much benefit as I can with this life. So in a way, I felt like I was. I think the bliss element of Tummo was very powerful in those moments. Um, and there's something strange about that, because I think the way people normally think about bliss, they think of it this kind of like dualistic way, as like, I don't feel any pain. Because actually I did feel pain. but it was that the pain didn't bother me. I didn't. It's funny because we actually know how this occurs in the brain. There is a way that you can experience pain without suffering. Uh, we are able to demonstrate this using hypnosis. It's the anterior cingulate cortex has a way of removing the suffering of pain. And so I was really kind of in that place. And also, not only was I not experiencing pain, I was really feeling this tremendous freedom and liberation of not, I guess, just accepting things as they were. And it's kind of stayed with me, you know, and actually, ever since I did Tummo, this is one of the things that I checked out with Tenzin Wangyal, like he was asking me last time, you know, um, what was it like when I went to talk to him? And one of the things that I asked him about was that, and this is actually true, still to this day, even when, you know, I was asking him about this, it was, you know, like during the retreat. And one of the things I noticed is that after I left the Tummo sessions, that uh, I didn't need to be doing all the, I don't want to say too much of secret things, but you know, one of the things about Tummo is there's body positions, you know, this kind of thing.
Cool core.
Yeah, yeah, you know, particularly in the Draklung, the most wrathful one. There's one that's called like a lion pose. I guess me saying lion doesn't tell you what it is, but so maybe I've kept the secret. But whatever. Anyone who's interested, this is real. You can do these things. And it's wonderful, and I highly recommend you find a lineage. Someone will teach you these things. You know. But I said this to Tenzin Wangyal. I notice, like now, anytime I breathe, I feel this connection. You know, as I can do now. You know, it's this bliss is not dependent on anything at all. You know, it's actually can be, if I don't get too hypnotized by my experience, uh, it always existed. And that's, you know, that's a thing that I think is a little strange for particularly hypnosis people to approach Tummo. They think maybe it's like hypnosis, we transform suffering into happiness. But I think actually this is different than that. It's about connecting with the bliss that was always there. You know, it's always there, like the sun in the sky, you know, always radiating love and bliss and love and everything irradiate from that. And so that was what I checked out with him was, you know, I didn't know, maybe I had fucked up or something. Now my breathing was, you know, was just going to make me crazy or something. I didn't feel like it would, but that was what I checked out with him actually. And it was like, this sounds like a good result of practice, not a bad, crazy thing. And it's really, I think that was one of the times that he like really uh, talks with me about the importance of uh, passing on what you learn. And what he actually said this to not long after to our entire group, and he talked about how he's actually not that very much attached to the role of being a teacher. And I found that to be really funny because in his, for my money, he is a fantastic teacher, amazing. Like, you know, who could learn so much and integrate it so much with many different mindsets, you know, and also have such a high level of realization of the practice that not only does he able to explain the conceptual view from a psychological point of view, a dharmic view, and even different lineages of dharma, because you know he knew Namki Norbu, and so he knows the Nyingma way of thinking of this, and of course the Bonpa way, and there are different lineages in the Bon, you know, so it's wild, you know. And so, you know, I would think like, wow, you know, this is like the a teacher of teachers for sure. And even his teacher is a teacher of teachers. Even his teacher Yangzen Rinpoche even teach the Dalai Lama. It's so very think like, how can he say this? And he said, like, literally, he was asked to teach by Yangzen Rinpoche when he is still a monk, and it was like at that time there were so few geshes capable of teaching when they were in exile there in Nepal and India. And so Yangzen Rinpoche said to him, "This is your responsibility. You have, gotten these teachings, and you should pass on." And so that was kind of like what I got out of that was I had experienced something, and so I needed to with uh, I needed to be deeply involved with trying to maintain the teachings at whatever level I could. And so that was particularly when I started helping here in Colorado, like not just going to retreats, but like doing anything, like make the coffee, you know, help find the hall where we would do these things, make announcements, keep time, make food, anything, anything that I could do, to be a part of keeping the teachings going. And that's been my attitude towards this is also advertising the teachings and trying to find uh, people who would be capable of receiving some benefit from it, and which, my teachers are always like anyone, they'll give the teaching to anyone, any sentient being without exception, even people are pretty rude, I've noticed. It's like not only they not approached with devotion, but actually rude people that teach everyone exactly the same with great as a psychologist, I often wonder, is that wise? It seems like, maybe you should be thinking, some people, their capacity isn't good enough or something, but no, they just give the teachings to everyone. And they will, adapt if they know you, the teachings, but yeah, they give it to everyone without exception. It's amazing. Um, when I had that experience with Tenzin Wangyal, that really, so I got this benefit. I now have responsibility to continue in whatever way I'm able to do this. And that it really uh, was one of the things that really put me on this path to wanting to teach at Naropa. And I realized Naropa is the ideal place for me to bring this life mission I have of bringing Dharma and psychology together. And um, so, yeah, I feel a sense of responsibility. There's this wonderful Christian saying. I forget if it's from Ephesians or where it is, but they say, much is expected from those unto whom much is given. And so I really feel this very strongly, particularly I got that when Tenzin Wangyal started talking about, after I mentioned my experience, the responsibility of teaching arises when you have gotten something. And that's really, so anyway, I just wanted to finish that because I remember you had asked me about that last time. And I was thinking about what that moment was like. And I was actually more focused on wanting to share what I have experienced. And again, any misunderstandings are mine. So I don't want to necessarily share that, but who knows, but some things I'm quite certain of. And really, this stuff has been so beneficial. And I have to say, my experience of almost dying there, that really affirmed me. Because I have met people like really they're suffering so badly with COVID-19 and Guillain-Barre and Epstein-Barr, and it keeps coming back, and that did not happen to me. And, I'm sure a lot of this has to do with all kinds of factors, but I have no doubt in my mind the blessings that I receive and all of that has something to do with why I have steadily always gotten better rather than gotten worse, and why I got better so much faster than people usually do. Um, you know, so much better than even they forecast. Like they were saying, I would probably leave the hospital. It would be a good goal if I could leave in a wheelchair. But these people kept pushing me, you know, and instead I left walking. And it's funny because they gave me a walker to leave the hospital, but they took it away from me because they wanted to see if I could do it without the walker. And so I could. It was not pretty, but I was walking, and I never used the walker at home even once. This was so funny. I paid, I don't know, $100 for this thing. I should give it to someone else, I guess now. Someone else will need, I will give you a walker. So I don't know, like this is really I try, yeah, this the other thing it reminds me about with this is hmm, responsibility of teaching others, and not being too attached, you know, to meditative experiences, I guess, or realizations, or however we want to think of this. You know, is really also those must be joyfully uh, dissolve into the great expanse of the sky. And then I feel like that is where they really become most powerful, like not holding on to anything, uh, and still doing whatever arises that is important. And so for me, it's about recommitting to how I can be of the most benefit to myself and others. And you know I still get rehypnotized. The way that I know it is that people make me angry sometimes. You know, like, oh, damn it, you know. And can I let it dissolve into the great expanse of the sky? Yes, but still, I've no doubt I get rehypnotized by the dreamlike nature of the self and reality. And I'm enjoying working with that and playing with it. And but there's no doubt in my mind, all these teachings I receive made for this great opportunity to practice everything I had ever learned, uh, and even things like I haven't talked about, like uh, how deeply we can learn through loving people. Like that was a big part of that. Was, you know, not even something we normally. Well, I guess there are some certain traditions of Dharma that talk about this, you know, karma mudra or something, you know. But what I really learned through deep love that people gives to me, you know, in my life, even people that are not Dharma practitioners, they're just very loving people, you know, like my friend Jill, you know, and Bethany, and the crazy nurse, you know. Uh, it's really so much love, you know, and how powerful that is, and how much wisdom there is in just loving unconditionally people. That is enough wisdom, really. Not even learn any of these other things I learned. If you had that, then that would be innately good enough. I mean, actually, I feel like that's what the Dharma is really pointing to, is really uh, not so much a philosophy that needs to be maintained, but a seamless experience of love and compassion, and the knowledge of what could be done to help the person in front of you and yourself, and the world in general. And it's like that. That's what this realization is about. Not about some philosophy I can maintain in a debate and sound really cool. No, that's kind of fun too. But that one won't help you when you're dying. Well, I don't know, maybe it does, I don't know. But what really help is yeah, non-attachment and love. That one, they help, and this experience really brought that together for me. um, so I don't know, I guess at some point, uh, unless, you know, they really invent this Neuralink stuff, and I don't die at all, and I get uploaded into Elon Musk's Mars colony or something. Even then, probably there'll be some Bardo. That'd be interesting to see, you know, what happens to the teachings as we get into this transhumanist. Like, where does transhumanist meet Vajrayana and Dzogchen? I feel like there's definitely going to be something there. I don't know what. But I don't know. I think it's enough to do in the traditional teachings. There's more you could learn in one lifetime anyways. And so I guess maybe I would say then, and you're asking about the practices, I'm so grateful to all my teachers, Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche, teach me at Tummo, Chud, give me Nundro, taught me so many different Dzogchen teachings, and then Geshe Yungdrung Rinpoche, who lives here in Denver, and it gave me so many practices also, and empowerments, and give so much personal time, even concerned with whether I'm hungry, this kind of thing. Really care about me as a human being, invite me to parties, and come over for soup, tukpa, and momo, and it's really wonderful. And Kempo Yungdrung Rinpoche, who taught me the Kusum Rangskar check, where a text that comes from Tummo in our tradition comes from a couple texts, I guess, but the one I learned is from that one. Study so much that text and all of the practices that come from the Kusum Rangskar. You come and just read word by word that text over 5 years, and still he's doing over the internet, it's really not stopping. And so I just really want to encourage anyone, or maybe you heard me talk about these things that are real. You could do these things. Why don't you? And do you need to do all of them? No, just do whatever is available that will make it better. Start wherever you are. And oddly enough, I feel like in the end, no matter how many fancy things you receive, it comes down to this moment anyways, and how attached you are to your experience of this moment. You can get just learning shamatha shine meditation, you can get this. Is it possible you can learn more and more about it through taking more trainings and teachings? For sure you can. However, it will be enough even if you got one bit, then you got all of it all at once. So never feel like at the beginning is not as good as the end. Like I think I mentioned also there's this wonderful Orioki meal chant in the Zen tradition of Sunju Suzuki Roshi that he shared with Trungpa Rinpoche's students. It says, the holy Dharma is good in the beginning, the middle, and the end. And so to me, it feels like all of these practices are good. Go out and do them and enjoy and investigate the supreme mysteries of our mind and ourself. It is quite different than we think.
I think that's a wonderful place to leave it. Dr. Ian Wickramasekera, thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate so much your kindness in these interviews and your wisdom, your insight. And thank you for doing this for the whole community of people interested in spirituality and the truth. I watch your videos all the time, and I really treasured this opportunity. Thank you so much. It was very kind.
It's been my pleasure.
Thank you for listening to another Guru Viking podcast. For more interviews like these, as well as articles, videos, and guided meditations, visit www.guruviking.com.